Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here on Horizon. I'm Rob McClendon. When voters go to the polls in November, they'll be choosing more than just our next president. In addition to the elected offices, there'll be state questions on the ballot, one of which is called Right to Farm. Opponents of Right to Farm, or State Question 777 as it will appear on the ballot, say this keeps new unnecessary regulations off the books for Oklahoma farmers. But opponents of 777 say if passed, farmers would have too much freedom, inviting abuse and eventually federal regulation. Blaine Singletary gives us a look at both sides of this debate.
Jimmy Kinder is an Oklahoma farmer.
This is a fourth-generation farm. We primarily grow wheat and cattle, grow some canola, sesame, grain sorghum. So we're well-diversified farming area in southwest Oklahoma.
Aside from the normal day-to-day challenges he faces in this profession, including where the fifth generation may come from, he also worries about tighter farming industry regulations. Such measures are being enacted in other states, and State Question 777 seeks to keep them off the books in the Sooner States.
777 is important to my farm because as we look on the east and west coast, we see some ballot initiatives, some regulations that have come out of those states that not are necessarily science-based, they're more social-based, and they inhibit the way those farmers are able to produce food and fiber for their land.
If approved, SQ 777 will amend the state constitution, adding in a new section guaranteeing the right of farmers and ranchers to make use of agricultural technology, livestock procedures, and ranching practices. Kinder embraces these modern farming and ranching methods and says they're vital for the future of his farm.
To say that I believe that because of modern farming operations that I'm doing now, that the next generation will actually have a better farm than I inherited. And so I don't want anyone to be able to come in and inhibit that because of non-scientific social pressure.
Modern operations like growing GMO crops.
And we do so because it makes good economic sense, it makes good sense from the science point of view, and actually we're able to build our soil because of some of these GMO crops.
And with special interest groups and propositions in other states looking to change the way GMOs are produced and sold, amongst other things, the Oklahoma Farm Bureau decided to take action on behalf of the state's farmers.
But we here at Farm Bureau saw the need over the past couple years through what other states are doing through their legislative bodies.
John Collison is the Vice President of Public Policy for the Farm Bureau. And he's not happy with some laws other states have passed, like California's Proposition 2, requiring all eggs sold in the state to come from chickens living in more spacious cages. It went into effect January 2015 after receiving 60% voter approval.
What these states are doing through their legislative body is putting agriculture out of business. And so the reason State Question 777 exists is so that we can make sure here at the Oklahoma Farm Bureau that we're protecting Oklahoma's agricultural industry, the state's second largest industry, into the future.
Collison says this proposed amendment would add another line of defense for farmers and ranchers. It limits lawmakers' abilities to interfere with the rights this amendment would add. In order to enact legislation against these rights, they must be justified by a compelling state interest.
And that's what we need in place, a compelling state interest. Because what's happening in the other states is they're just going in and putting in statutory laws and affecting agriculture that way.
The state question is undeniably broad and tough, but Collison points out it's not entirely impenetrable.
The legislators still can affect it. They can still pass bills. It just needs to have a compelling state interest that these pieces of legislation make sense into the future.
While the yes side says this question is meant to make sure the legislature can't just do whatever it wants, the no side says this amendment, if passed, would allow farmers to do whatever they want. We spoke to some of them at a press conference held at the state capitol.
It gives a privileged immunity for agriculture, and nobody else has that.
That's former Senator Paul Meggy. He's part of the newly formed Oklahoma Stewardship Council, a coalition of former and current lawmakers and public figures leading the opposition against 777. As a man who's also worked in agriculture for decades, Meggy says this cause is personal.
I've done battle with the big agribusinesses for years, and have seen the demise of our market structure, our family farm operations. In other words, get big or get out. I was told that by ag economists.
The council says this would blow the doors wide open for farmers both big and small. But the big farmers would come out on top in the end. Former State Attorney General Drew Edmondson leads the Oklahoma Stewardship Council.
Well, agriculture has changed over the last few decades where, it used to be there were millions of small family farms across the country. That is not farming today. Now farming is done by Smithfield, it's done by Tyson, it's done by Seaboard.
Edmondson says if this measure passes, not only would the state legislature have its hands tied, but municipal and county lawmakers as well.
If the city of Norman decided that they wanted to ban skunk farms inside the city limit, they would not be able to do that under 777.
Their main argument is that 777 wouldn't allow the laws to change as quickly as the industry changes.
I don't know what they're going to think of adding next week. We don't know what genetic modifications they're going to want to do to our seed plants next year. But we have to maintain the ability to respond to a rapidly changing corporate production of food.
No, I don't see that.
Again, John Collison.
The fact of the matter is we're an agriculture state. We're here to protect agriculture. We're here to make sure that agriculture into the future is successful.
And that success is important, he says, for the over 600,000 Oklahomans who are food insecure, a cause that Jimmy Kinder also takes to heart.
That number shouldn't be there. I should be able to grow food as cheaply as possible for those people that are insecure so they can have food on the table.
It's a power struggle, with each side not wanting the other to have too much freedom when it comes to deciding how we run Oklahoma's #2 industry. But with the issue now in the hands of voters, all either side can do is work to get their message out to the public. Drew Edmondson.
Well, if you ask 10 people, are they in favor of the freedom to farm, probably 9 of them are going to say yes. It sounds like something we ought to be for. So it's going to be an educational process to say that the devil's in the details, and farmers are not in jeopardy right now from the state.
And farmers like Jimmy Kinder say the state is not in danger from them.
At the core of who I am, I grow food for people, and that's what I'm about. If it passes today, nothing changes out here on the farm. We still will have rules and laws that we have to abide by, and we're okay with that.
Now, State Question 777 will go before voters on Election Day this November 8th and will go into effect if it gets a simple majority of the votes cast. Now, when we return, we'll visit with the director of the Center for Food Integrity, who tries to answer the question many farmers are asking themselves: why do they hate us?